Once upon a time, in a very beautiful African village located somewhere in West Africa, there was a village called Kalamnita. It was a matriarchal village, ruled by a queen whose face no one in the village had ever seen. In this village, rumors circulated here and there, claiming that there was a powerful evil spirit that devoured the souls of people who dared to make pacts with it. No one had ever seen it, nor could anyone testify whether these claims were true or not, for these legends were told from generation to generation. The old wise men spoke of it often. According to them, one person had managed to make a pact, but unfortunately, that person had mysteriously disappeared a few years later. However, they did not dare to say this person's name, because this person was not dead, but alive and suffering the consequences of their pact. This was the most mysterious person in the village, a person whom no one knew, and everyone dreamed of seeing. This was the queen of the village. She had met the evil spirit and made a wish, but the price to pay was exorbitant. Unfortunately, no one knew this, except for a few among the old dignitaries and occultists of the village. It was because of her that the old occultists and wise men warned anyone who would dare to defy the taboo. For the queen was a secret example of the consequences. The old wise men called the sacred forest an evil forest, claiming that no one should ever try to set foot on the cursed lands of this forest. In reality, the evil spirit called Nadia was actually a simple forest spirit, innocent and without any cruelty within it. Its only flaw was that the conditions for granting a wish were very harsh and merciless. Furthermore, it was never easy to find, because in the sacred forest, there were other things that devoured any person who entered the forest with a heart full of darkness. To be able to meet the forest spirit, there were 3 conditions to fulfill. 1. To have a heart full of overwhelming ambition. 2. To have a very powerful spirit. 3. To be a person capable of anything, without fear. Meanwhile, in the village, some of the village women were wondering. Sitting together in a circle, they were doing what they usually did when they had nothing else to do. The topic was, why had the queen forbidden and refused to see anyone at the royal palace? Evo, the mother of a very beautiful 16-year-old girl named Furka, replied mockingly, perhaps she is very ugly and disgusting to look at, she said in a voice full of arrogance. Another woman, Baroka, added, perhaps she is blind or afraid of people, she said in an equally mocking voice. Baroka also had a very beautiful 14-year-old daughter, Juane, who was very beautiful with a well-developed body. But if they knew what the queen had and what she had sacrificed to save the village, to the point that she avoided seeing people, they would never be sitting here talking nonsense about her, but rather thanking her, said an old sage, sitting not far from their group. The old sage asked them a question, ladies, you who know so much, tell us why it always rains in this village, why things succeed effortlessly here, why the animals are so abundant. How did we come to know that there was an evil spirit at the gates of this village? They were all left speechless. No one dared to say anything, because they knew nothing at all. One woman answered, it was a well again, in a voice full of arrogance, it's just luck, we are blessed, that's all. Old man, leave us women to discuss now, said Varoka in a scornful voice. The old man replied with a smile on his lips, luck, a blessing, truly, you are very ignorant. Listen, there has never been a free blessing or easy luck. Everything requires a sacrifice. If today you are so happy that you can talk nonsense about the savior of this village, who is your queen, that's your business. And so, the old man went on his way, shaking his head. A few months later, a person decided to defy the taboo. He went into the sacred forest with the goal of finding the evil spirit. But unfortunately, right at the entrance, he was struck down by an impressive and malevolent power. The next morning, his body was found at the edge of the forest, a body drained of blood, as if the forbidden forest selected all those who were to enter its realm. The villagers were terrified and afraid, because the person found dead was actually the son of the village's greatest marabout. Everyone wondered what would happen now. Knowing the marabout's character, they were all in shock and waited to see his reaction. Upon his arrival, the marabout took his child and, with the help of a few people, buried him without making a scene, as if he knew the reason for his son's death and held no grudge against anyone, which seemed strange to everyone. When people questioned him, he said in a firm voice, my son lost his life because of his arrogance and for disobeying the warnings. Listen, even if I wanted to, I could reveal the reason for his eternal rest, but I will not, because no one could do anything about it. The marabout added, if you want to live. Avoid that forest and live your lives peacefully. A few days later, a very handsome, mysterious man, a pastor named Jean, arrived in the village of Kalamnida. His beginnings in the village were not too difficult, because despite his mysterious appearance, he seemed kind and understanding. Pastor Jean was mysteriously capable of performing miracles, which he attributed to the divine. He always dressed elegantly and preached the Bible extensively in the village, hoping to attract many followers. A few weeks later, Pastor Jean built a large church, where he prayed with the congregation. But Pastor Jean had ambitions to become rich and achieve even greater success in this village. However, most villagers were very wary of this stranger, especially those with deep roots in ancestral traditions. A few days later, Pastor Jean managed to build a small reputation for himself in the village. People finally spoke of him as the man who healed people for free, without asking for anything in return. His most devoted followers were the two village women, Awa and Veroka, the ones who couldn't keep their mouths shut without spreading unfounded rumors. In the village, they were called the slanderous women, those who spread stories without proof. Together, they and Pastor Jean began preaching the Bible throughout the village. For them, what Pastor Jean did and what he believed in was more powerful than the traditions they had grown up with. Those who were easily manipulated followed them, and those who were loyal to their traditions remained steadfast in their faith and customs. In the village, people hated Awoa and Veroka because they were following a stranger. But if people had known the real reason why Awoa and Veroka had decided to follow Pastor Jean. In reality, when Pastor Jean first arrived in the village, he knew he wouldn't have the slightest chance of getting people to follow him. But, clever as he was, he managed to bribe the two women, Awoa and Veroka, to help him deceive the people. Pastor Jean had spoken to them about a scheme that would make a lot of money. If they helped him, they would become rich. As greedy as they were, they decided to follow him. And so, they managed to convince the poor villagers. His goals, his life's difficulties. In reality, Pastor Jean had a primary objective: to successfully manipulate Queen Miriam of the village, the most mysterious woman, the one whom no one had ever managed to meet. Pastor Jean wanted to use her to obtain great wealth. Unfortunately for him, it was impossible to meet her, or at least, that's what the old occultists thought. Because only one person was authorized to see Queen Miriam, the greatest marabout in the village. One day, Pastor Jean discovered, through the two women Awoa and Veroka, that the village queen had never set foot outside her palace. They told him that perhaps she was cursed. For once, their words weren't entirely unfounded, because it was true, even though they were only repeating rumors. And so, Pastor Jean decided to go to the royal palace to see the queen. Upon arriving at the gates, he was stopped by the royal guards. As he was making a scene, the village marabout came to meet him in the royal courtyard and asked him what he wanted. But, alas, true to form, he was sticking his nose where it didn't belong. Driven by his audacity, he demanded to speak with Queen Miriam. Meanwhile, in the royal palace, a woman sat alone, tears in her eyes. "My people, I am sorry, I can do nothing for you." This was the queen of the village, the one no one had ever seen. Her face concealed, she sat with her eyes closed. Even in the royal palace, the guards had never seen her face. The queen was so secretive and hidden from everyone that anyone who came close to her died mysteriously. The only person who could see and speak to her was the great marabout of the village, the man whom everyone feared. In reality, Queen Miriam was very much alive, but she was cursed because of her secret pact with an evil spirit. No one knew the reason why she had made this pact, except for the old occultists, the village elders, and the great marabout, who was her right-hand man. Queen Miriam was a woman of great external beauty and a genuinely good person at heart. She had not hesitated to sacrifice her own life for the happiness of the village. In reality, Queen Miriam was blind, and when her gaze fell upon a person who was weak-minded, that person would die mysteriously. Therefore, to avoid killing people and suffering herself, she decided to lock herself away in the royal palace to await her death. Her only guardian was the marabout. He was unaffected by the curse and was very loyal and devoted to her, as he had witnessed what she had done to save everyone. All the marabouts had tried everything to cure Queen Miriam, but no one had succeeded. Despite sacrifices and incantations, they failed miserably. But if they only knew that there was one person capable of succeeding where they had failed. Flashback to the queens and the village's past. 10 years ago, before Queen Miriam became a secret to all, the village was going through a very difficult crisis. Harvests were poor, water was scarce, and the trees were dying. Queen Miriam, then very young and dynamic, wanted to save everyone. Worried, she spent her time thinking when she discovered an old letter from her mother, the previous queen, who had died of old age. After reading the letter, she understood that the Forbidden Forest housed a creature capable of helping them and saving the village in these difficult times. But the letter also stated, and expressly forbade, that anyone who dared to cross the entrance of this forest would lose something precious, either their life or the thing they cherished the most. Naively, Queen Miriam decided not to heed these warnings. A few days later, during the night, accompanied by the village marabout, she went to the edge of the Forbidden Forest, a frightening place. But upon their arrival, the marabout was warned by the spirits, "Hey, do not enter this forest, or you will die. The Forbidden Forest chooses who may proceed, and the queen is the only one capable and eligible for this journey. Wait for her here, outside." Frightened, the marabout said, "My queen, I cannot continue the journey. The gods are telling me not to advance, otherwise I risk death." Queen Miriam, with a smile, replied, "I am sorry, but before I leave, if I do not return, I would like Veracus' daughter to succeed me as the new queen of the village." Her voice betrayed a mix of fear and courage, like someone who has no choice. After that, with a very determined look, she entered the Forbidden Forest. She began walking alone in that dark and noisy forest. Queen Miriam was mesmerized. There were evil but harmless creatures there. After hours of walking, she got lost. Every time she tried to retrace her steps, she found herself back in the same place, as if she were condemned to wander in that forest. Exhausted and without any solution, Queen Miriam shouted loudly, without fear, "Evil spirit, show yourself. I can't take it anymore. Come, I need your help, please." At first, nothing happened. Queen Miriam fell to her knees, crying, saying, "If I had known, I should never have set foot here." A few hours later, an icy wind swept through the forest. The place, previously very noisy, became silent and calm, as if the very atmosphere had grown heavy. The animals hid. The forest seemed to empty of all presence. Queen Miriam stood up and wiped her tears. She knew the moment had arrived. The evil spirit appeared before her. Queen Miriam was frightened, clenched her fists to avoid screaming, until she managed to calm down. The evil spirit was a frightening being, emitting a mystical aura. It resembled a human but had bright yellow eyes. Facing this mystical being, Queen Miriam decided not to falter. The evil spirit said, "Human, what do you want? Since you have managed to draw me to this sacred place." Queen Miriam replied, "Ah, spirit of the forest, I need your help. Can you help me? My village is on the brink of collapse. Nothing is going right. The drought persists, water is very scarce. The villagers are dying every day for no reason. The trees and animals are beginning to vanish. As the queen of this village, I wish to save it." The forest spirit said nothing, merely staring at her for long minutes. Then it replied, "Human, you have come all this way, braved the impossible, faced all the dangers hidden in the forest, just for a people and a village. Well, all right. Your request is nothing to me, for I am capable of anything, except bringing someone back to life." Queen Miriam replied, "Yes, I am ready to give everything, my wealth, my blood if necessary, but please save my village." The spirit said, "Your wealth? What would I do with such triviality? I want your eyesight. In exchange for the fulfillment of your wish, I will take your vision. And if ever a person looks at you, they will die. Except for one, the person with whom you arrived here. Apart from him, any person who sees you will die. In short, as soon as you leave here, if your entire village sees you, they will die without exception. From today onward, you must only show yourself to one person, your guardian." Queen Miriam asked, "Why this pact? Is it a punishment from you, or is it a coincidence?" The evil spirit replied, "There is no coincidence in this. Human," with a very disconcerting smile, "it is deliberate. You must understand that sacrificing yourself for others is not a noble fight, but rather an absurd stupidity. To punish you, I condemn you to lose what you hold so dear." Queen Miriam said, "Thank you very much. I am proud to have at least been useful to my people. My mother would be proud of me." The spirit said, "There is still time to make another wish. For yourself and only for yourself. Change your wish." Queen Miriam replied, "Never. My decision is made. I will never go back on my word." "So be it," replied the evil spirit, with a very irritated expression. With a flash of magic, Queen Miriam disappeared and found herself at the gates of the Forbidden Forest, but her eyes were gone. She could no longer see anything, and so unfolded the tragic past and ultimate sacrifice of Queen Miriam. Back in the present, the marabout had an idea. Since Queen Miriam could only be seen by him alone, if Pastor Jean were to look at her, he might die. With a smile, he led the latter into the royal palace. Once there, Pastor Jean was mesmerized by the sight of Queen Miriam, but against all expectations, he fell to his knees in the Christian manner and, while praying, declared, "May this curse not touch me." The marabout, perplexed, watched the scene like someone at a spectacle, deeply surprised by what he was seeing. Pastor Jean approached Queen Miriam. She thought it was her guardian, the marabout, but Pastor Jean said, "Dear Queen." Analyzing the voice, Queen Miriam realized it was not him, but someone else. Seized with fear, like a mouse facing a cat, she cried out, "Don't come near me, you could die." Pastor Jean replied, "No, do not fear. I am capable of escaping the useless curse that person cast upon you." "How is it possible?" Queen Miriam asked the marabout. The latter replied, "Yes." Pretentious and curious, Pastor Jean asked, "My queen, what is your name?" She replied, "My name is Miriam." He continued, "Do you wish to see again, sovereign of this village?" Queen Miriam said, "No, it's impossible." Pastor Jean declared, "Nothing is impossible for God." Queen Miriam replied, "Yes, I want to. I want to see how my village has changed over the past 20 years. Pastor Jean said, "I can do it, but think about how you will reward me." The queen declared, "If you restore my sight, I will marry you and make you the richest man in the village." Pastor Jean replied, "No, I don't want any of that." So, she asked, "What do you want then?" He answered, "The throne." The marabout, who was present, wanted to intervene, but the queen smiled and said, "Agreed, if that is what you want." With a presumptuous smile, Pastor Jean placed his hand on Queen Miriam's head and began to pray with all his might for hours. Meanwhile, in the village, the sky suddenly turned black, as if the clouds were heralding the liberation of a person who had suffered so much for a grand cause. Pastor Jean said, "O Queen, open your eyes." Queen Miriam opened them, and it was the ultimate moment, for the second time in her life. She was seeing the world after 20 years of blindness. Pastor Jean declared, "Queen, I've changed my mind. I would like to know the reason, and who is responsible for your curse." So the queen told him, "It was the evil spirit of the Forbidden Forest. I made a pact with it." Pastor Jean retorted, "Visible evil spirits do not exist." Queen Miriam concluded, "Whatever the case may be, never try to go there. It is a curse." Meanwhile, in the village, Aoa and Veroka, the two women, had changed significantly. They now dressed like nobles and, according to the latest news, had become very wealthy. Ao's daughter, Furka, had become very arrogant and disrespectful. She lived like a princess in the village, just like her mother. She regularly attended Pastor Jean's church, and often mocked other girls her age who did not live in the same luxury. The same phenomenon was observed with Veroka's daughter, Juane. Once very respectful, she had transformed into a strange girl, very greedy, who loved luxury above all else. Just like her mother, she was a faithful follower of Pastor Jean and his church. In reality, Aoa and Veroka's sudden wealth came from their contract with Pastor Jean, who had promised them riches if they worked in his interest by attracting new villagers to his church. And no one knew this. But unfortunately, if Aoa and Veroka had known, what awaited them in the near future? Meanwhile, back at the royal palace, after listening to Queen Miriam, Pastor Jean conceived a very ambitious plan. But to hide his intentions, he declared, "I will fight this evil spirit, in the name of God, and purify the forest." Queen Miriam laughed and said, "Pastor Jean, you are mad. If you even manage to cross the entrance of the Forbidden Forest without losing your life, thank your God." Pastor Jean laughed, "You'll see." Before leaving, he added, "Keep your throne. Anyway, I won't need it anymore, for I know how to achieve my goals." Hey, Pastor Jean, do not try to make a pact with that evil spirit, for you will regret it. It mocks people. And so, Pastor Jean left the royal palace with a deeply unsettling smile. "Evil spirit, let me laugh," he said confidently. "If it exists, I will ask it for everything I want, and I will be capable of sacrificing any life for it." Pastor Jean arrived at the edge of the Forbidden Forest. The moment he crossed its entrance, everything suddenly turned black. Holding a Bible in his hand, he advanced through the darkness until, in the heart of the forest, a warm wind struck him. At the core of this wind stood the spirit in question. She was of striking beauty, with a pragmatic air about her. Pastor Jean, astonished, exclaimed, "Are you the evil spirit? But you are very captivating." The evil spirit remained silent. Pastor Jean continued, "I want you to help me. In truth, I am not a pastor. My goal is to steal from and plunder this beautiful village. As for my miracles, I was born with healing gifts. This Bible I'm holding, I know nothing about it. Every time I pray, I pretend by spouting nonsense so people take me seriously." The evil spirit, Nadia, then said, "You are the one who freed the queen, are you not? Then you will pay for daring to confront me. Tell me, what do you desire? Wealth or honor?" Pastor Jean replied, "Thank you very much. I wish to be more influential in the village, to the point where even the queen holds no authority against mine. And I want to have even more power." The evil spirit said, "Listen, you are not human. You are the product of a sacrifice, abandoned at birth on the threshold of a hut, not by a human, but by a spirit. You too are a spirit. I can make you very popular, but you will have to marry virgin girls. And if you sleep with one of them on your wedding night, you will become even more popular." Then, with an evil laugh, the spirit added, "But let me confess something to you. This pact is not so easy for you. Remember, you are not human. You do not have the right to sleep with a human. If you do, she will die on the night of the first full moon following your sexual relations. The choice is yours whether you want to become popular or not." Pastor Jean declared, "I will get married, and I will do whatever it takes. I don't care who dies." And so, he left the forbidden forest, having accomplished nothing of what he had claimed he would do before entering.